Procreate have just released version 5.2 and they've included lots of new features including 3D drawing, stroke stabilization, a recent brushes menu, brush memory and so much more. And I just want to show you some of the tools that we'll find useful when we're creating our wedding table illustrations. Now the first thing to do is go and see what version you have of Procreate. To do this, open Procreate and then tap on Gallery. And if you tap on Procreate here, it will show you here which version you've currently got installed. Now I believe this can automatically update when your iPad updates, but if you want to trigger an update, open your App Store and select your profile icon here, and it will show you your apps here and which ones of those can be updated. If you don't see the update available, then you'll need to update your iOS within your settings. Once you've updated to version 5.2, then you'll see some new things that appear on your menus. So the first thing I want to talk about is your recent brushes. Now this is something that is really useful for us and we've kind of been waiting for a long time. So now once you open your brushes menu, you'll see at the top here the star icon and your recent menu. And what this is going to do is give you your last 8 brushes that you've used. So if I now go and choose my watercolour brush, maybe my draping brush, now you'll see in the recents menu you've got your watercolour brush and draping brush and they'll list in order of most recent at the top. Now if you swipe left on these brushes, there's a few things you can do. Find will open up the brush set that it's located in. So if I select Find, it's going to open up this basics brush set here. You can see it's highlighted blue there. And then again, if you swipe left on your recent brush, you can pin it to the top. This is great for brushes that you use all of the time. And you can also undo that as well. So the next thing I want to show you is the brush size and the opacity memory markers. Now this is really useful for when you're trying to do precise drawings and it's just a quick way to reference previous sizes and opacities that you've used. So if I go select a brush, and as normal we've got our size here from 0 to 100%. Say I'm going to create something at this percentage. What I can do now is tap and select this plus button and it will leave a marker there. So when you then go and create something at a different percentage and mark that one, now instead of having to remember, oh, was it 6% before? Now you can just tap and it will switch between those markers and you can have up to 4. So suddenly you're able to go in and use preferred sizes that you've used before. And then to get rid of those, you can just tap the minus button to clear those. You can also do the same thing with the opacity slider. So once you've found an opacity that you like using, you just tap on that slider, select the plus button, and then you can just go back, tap it, and it will change the settings to your preferred percentage. Now the next thing I want to show you is the new stabilization menu that's appeared. So before, in each of your brush settings there would have been a stabilization that was set to the brush. Now there's a whole new menu that appears. When you go into your brush studio, there's now the stabilization tab and there's 3 new settings: the streamline, stabilization and motion filtering. And there are some complexities to these, but the basis is if you are going to increase the amount of streamline on your brush, so if I just draw a wiggle there and I increase that streamline. You can see how it makes a much softer curve, whereas before you can see it picks up every single kind of jitter within the movement of the brush. By increasing the streamline, you get a much smoother curve. And stabilization has been created to reduce the amount of kind of shakiness within your drawing. So if you have a shaky hand or you're on a shaky surface, it's gonna just smooth out those to try and get it into a straight line. So obviously if you have this up at maximum, it's very hard to draw curves. The brush is wanting to create a straight line. And if I do this really fast, you see it won't even let me create many circles. But if you do have a shaky hand or your surface is shaky, this will help stabilize that line. So when you're creating new brushes yourself, you can go and change these settings. I would say be careful of the settings you change within brushes that you've purchased, because some of them will have terms and conditions applied where when you've purchased them, you're not allowed to change them. But another way of implementing this stabilization is to do it globally. So you can go into the wrench icon, preferences, and pressure and smoothing. And in here, you can increase the stabilization of all of the brushes within all the brush sets. So if you want to play around with, if you prefer drawing this way, then this is a good way to globally change this within Procreate. So the next change that Procreate have implemented in this new version is a change to the adjustments. Now previously, when you're working on a layer, you can go in, select your magic wand tool, and here you have the same adjustments menu. So we might want to change the hue, saturation and brightness. Now before, when you tapped here, you would get two options, layer or pencil. So do you want to make changes to everything included within the layer you're working on, or do you want to change it just to the pencil right now, so that as you now continue drawing, there's changes in the brush? Now when you select, it doesn't give you that option, it just opens up and it will automatically assume you want to make those changes to the layer you're working on. And this is what we'll most often do. So that saves on just an extra click. And then if you do want to make changes to the layer, you can do that here. You can see I'm working on this left chair group here. And if you did want to make changes to the pencil, you have this drop down here now. And that's where that menu has been placed. So you have the option for layer and pencil here. It's just saved us a click, and then every time you want to make changes, you don't have to go back into that menu. For example, when we create shadows, we add that Gaussian blur. So you would tap here, Gaussian blur, and automatically you can go in and make that change on that layer instead of having to be asked where you want to make that change. And the final thing that I want to work through today is a few changes that have been made to the colour palette. So now when you open your colour menu, you've selected palettes down here. You now have two options. Compact is the same menu that we've worked in before. And now you can see when a colour palette is the default, it now has this tick here. So if I wanted to make this menu the default, I can select set as default and it stays where it is. And then when you select this disc menu, it's still going to be shown underneath your disc menu. So when you go into palettes, you can either keep this menu as it is, or you can select this cards option. And what this does is open up your palettes into a larger scale, and it gives you this little description here of what the colour is, which is great for people that are colourblind. And it's also great if you know you're working on a certain colour palette, you can come in and name those. So if you're using Pantone color codes, you could just come in, tap, and rename that color code here. Now I think I'll keep using the palettes menu in the compact mode, but it is always nice to have the option just to enlarge that and ensure that you're selecting, if you have various shades of the same color, to select the correct one when you're drawing. So those are just a summary of 5 of the updates within Procreate version 5.2 that I think will find useful and you'll probably come across as we continue to create wedding tables and place setting illustrations. Feel free to update your Procreate version and have a play around with these new tools. And if you want to grab these 10 Procreate brushes for free, just follow the link in the description below and you'll be able to play around with these new tools using some new brushes as well.